Hello and welcome back to the How to Get an Analytics Job podcast. So today I'm going to be talking with Charlie here, who's actually a former client of mine, and Gavin, my current apprentice. We're going to be having a conversation around, Charlie, your experience as a CFO working with Excel, Power BI, and Tableau, which I know you've done all so far. And then also get some kind of takes on career advice for Gavin here. So Charlie, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Hanging in there. Sorry, we started a little bit late. We had some technical difficulties, but we got it worked out. Gavin, how are you doing?
Pretty good.
Gavin,
awesome.
Nice to meet you.
So, Gavin, fill us in because we just talked earlier today. So you just tentatively got your second offer, right?
Correct. Yes.
Awesome. So can you tell us a little bit more about that position?
So the position is for a consulting company, mostly in project management, but the person that interviewed me was very interested in like our final project, as far as us working with the manufacturing company. They consult with a lot of different industries, working on a lot of different companies. So that seemed to help a little bit better there. A couple more steps through that process. So we'll see. I could probably touch base like next week, but that's the basic gist of it.
Gotcha. Well, congratulations on soon to be securing your second offer. And that's a big deal. So one thing I think we should kind of start with, which is in the first month, Charlie, I walked them through analytics foundations. Then we jumped to Excel, Power BI, and Tableau. So from your perspective, how well should a financial analyst know Excel? Like, are there common functions that they should know, or should it be more of just kind of how they use Excel to uncover insights and data?
Right. Well, I'll tell you first of all, I spent a lot of time in Excel, given my financial function at the company. The things that I do a lot with is the lookup, the vertical lookup, a lot of tables I'm pulling together. And that tends to be when I'm just doing some analysis on my own. Second is pivot tables. That I generally build them on my own, but then I would bring the pivot tables to other people that I'm collaborating with. Really not a formal setting like a monthly meeting or something like that, but I find that extremely useful. Other people that I'm collaborating with.
Uh-oh, we're getting some feedback. Do you guys hear that?
Monthly meeting. Yes. Yeah.
Gavin,
I think that was me. Yeah, I think that was me.
Okay. Are your headphones plugged in?
Yeah, I had the actual YouTube show pulled up while we're doing
Oh, that's what it is. All right. Got it figured out.
Okay.
So Charlie, essentially what you're doing there is you're creating a very simple data model and then pulling out insights with pivot table, which is essentially the precursor to Power BI and Tableau. Okay. So I think it would be kind of cool, and I cleared this with you ahead of time, for us to kind of delve into some of the project work that you and I have worked on together. So,
sure.
Yes. So, how have you? What's been your experience working with Tableau within your organization?
It's been great. One of the challenges I had before I got together with you is we had this one particular project or objective, and it's to analyze the margin in the company, and margin is essentially profit, the difference between what you charge a customer and your costs. I understood the components of coming up with the presentation, if you will, or the analysis, and I could do it myself, one time, but it was fairly involved. And the challenges were to try and distribute that to the people I wanted to show the results to, updating the data, and then you're kind of recreating the functionality over and over again. I actually attended, I think, a presentation by you about Tableau, and it seemed like that was right on in terms of, what I was trying to do. It was technically above my head. I understood the concepts, but just didn't understand, the syntax and how to use the tool. And that's where you were extremely helpful. We kind of worked together on that. You came in and understood what my needs were, how the data came together, what the data points meant. And you were able to go away and pull together a prototype, and then we refined it several times. But it was extremely useful because I was able to achieve all those objectives I talked about before in terms of that I couldn't really do with Excel.
Right. Also, you need to give yourself more credit because you learned quite a bit about Tableau. Like as far as clients go, you're much more curious than the typical client I work with. They kind of want me to go handle everything, and then they want to click on this and find their insight. To where you actually kind of wanted to get behind everything and see how it all worked, which was really. I was almost like an advisor, like a Tableau advisor for you. Like you went out. I think you created the whole infrastructure, the server, and then you would come in and say, hey, I've got to figure out how to. I mean, I remember one problem was we had to identify specific SKUs within a column and then aggregate those, which is a little bit of a complex problem with Tableau, and you got to actually start to get into some coding.
Right. But that's where somebody like yourself or some of the people on your team really are valuable to someone like me in a company like ours. We either don't have the time to learn the tool, or we may not have the ability to get our heads around it. And it was really a good, partnership, the two of us, because you understood the tool. You really did a great job of understanding our needs, and you were able to kind of bring it all together.
Right. And I think that's kind of something I can piggyback off of. For those of you who are watching, both, on YouTube or wherever, and also my apprentices, when you're early on in your career, you have all this time and energy. Like Charlie, I'm sure your day is super busy day in and day out. So you don't have this time to sit down and just monkey with this one thing for 2 to 3 hours. Like that's too much of a time investment for you.
It really is. You're right.
Yeah. So that's kind of a superpower for you to be early on in your career, is that you're not as busy. And as you get deeper into your career, your time is going to cost more and more overall.
I would agree. Yeah.
Awesome. So let's get into a little spicy thing. You went and found someone else to do Power BI for you.
Right. So the reason we, first of all, switched to Power BI was we're running a Microsoft Enterprise Resource Planning System, or ERP system here. And, Microsoft pushes Power BI from an integration point of view and so forth. And not only with the ERP system, but with Excel, of course. You were busy. And then
I'm just messing with
you. Was that?
I said, I'm just picking on you.
Yeah. So the person that supports our ERP system, he knew somebody that knew Power BI. So that's why we brought him in. But it was more or less the same thing. The projects were largely centered around customer volume and revenue analysis. We have a facility here that processes the waste, and you can think of it like a factory. So if you're familiar with throughput and making sure you have the right inventory and so forth, we really needed help with that. The good news was we've grown a lot over the past 3 or 4 years. The challenge, though, was how do you keep on top of all that work, and how do you make sure that the material is moving through quickly? And Power BI, and I'm sure Tableau would have done this as well, allowed us to really keep on top of that data. And when I say us, what we were able to do for the first time, at least since I've been here, and it's been over 10 years, is push this out to people on the shop floor, so they could see every day, how much did I work on yesterday? What was my production? What do I need to work on today? Where are the bottlenecks and things like that? It's interesting because we have somebody here from one of our new affiliates. We were acquired back in December. They run a pretty similar operation up in the Northeast, and we showed them some of the things we did, and they're just kind of blown away by it. This industry is kind of behind the times, in my opinion, from a technology point of view. But the stuff we were able to do with Tableau and Power BI, first of all, they understood it right away in terms of what it did for us, and they absolutely love it. So,
yeah, I think that. I've seen some companies who use both Power BI and Tableau in tandem. I think Power BI is much stronger with the ETL process. So combining multiple data sources and then automating the whole process. with that transform data button, you can go in and you're literally clicking and it's creating this automation on the back end so that you don't have to touch it. Like it'll connect to the Excel file, reconfigure it, and then it's structured exactly how you need. To where I think Tableau is a little bit better at doing deeper dive analyses. So like some of the projects that you and I, Charlie, worked on were some pretty deep dives, and it was cool to see kind of that intersection of this is a pretty complex business need, and then the data that's underlying it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, getting the multiple data sources together, combining them, and then actually pushing out. That's awesome right there that you said the other people in your business actually intuitively understood what we built.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's fantastic.
So, one of the cool things about what we built is the simplicity to the user, right? They come in and you tell them that, if you see red on this chart, it's a problem. But underneath that chart is a lot of hours of development time and a lot of data that's constantly refreshing. So that's really the power of the tools that you folks work on for end users such as ourselves.
Gotcha. All right. So I feel bad. We've been neglecting the chat here. So we got Dr. Hall here, who's the dean over at High Point University. Welcome. I haven't talked to you in a while. We need to go grab a beer sometime. Also, so my former student, Christina, who secured her first offer. So I wanted to announce that to everyone. Congratulations, Christina. Look who it is. It's Hunter, our intern. Thanks for joining. And then I think Dr. Hall said, so they switched to Power BI so Dr. Hall actually found me because I put out a course on Tableau and he took it. Didn't realize that I was literally like 30 minutes away. So he's been a long time Tableau fan, and now it looks like they're switching from Power BI. So he let his MBA director run the business analytics concentration. He's also saying, sounds good, and congratulations, Christina. All right, so let's move into Gavin. I know you've got some questions for Charlie because you're kind of right there in that like active job search mark. So I'm sure you've got some things to talk about.
Yeah. So, I'll keep it kind of basic. So like, what does your average day look like? Because I've talked to John about it, and I was very interested in like the financial analyst kind of point. And then I saw obviously you have an accounting background. Kind of led you to your current position. You've been VP, senior VPs, owners, all the fun stuff. So what kind of led you to this point as far as getting into accounting and led you to your current company?
Great question. So a long time ago, I took accounting in college. I was fortunate to land a job at Price Waterhouse and get my CPA. The work was good. It was a lot of audit work, pretty tedious. But it really, for me personally, I really wanted to get involved with individual businesses and try and add more value, if you will. To me, auditing was always looking back, whereas I wanted to get involved with strategy and, working with folks in the company to how do we move the business forward. So I ended up going into private enterprise with a kind of a holding company that was very entrepreneurial in nature. They had probably 15 different business lines that they were involved in. They affiliated themselves with what was called venture capital back then. I guess now it would be a PE firm. And that to me was pretty exciting. It was always somewhat cutting edge. It was always very challenging. And I think the thing that helped me, going to Price Waterhouse to me was like going to grad school. It really, really helped me understand a lot about accounting. And then combined with the getting involved with some of these businesses and working with other disciplines has helped me just move through my career. I think one of the things I would recommend is, don't ever stop learning. Maybe the example of trying to get involved with Tableau and Power BI most recently in my career I think it's helped me. I'm just always curious about things like that, trying to figure out how we can apply different tools and methodologies to our business. So if you like challenges and you like change, to me, that's definitely a route to go. Companies absolutely value people that will work hard and, will take the time to understand their business and dig in and try and move things forward. So if you've got that appetite and you've got that approach towards things, you'll do great regardless of what company or what field you select.
Very cool. Now, just as far as like you said, you had your CPA, but like later you work with John David. As far as like the analytics, the Power BI, Tableau, you're already using Excel. Now, in between the CPA and like up to this point, was there any type of like certification or extra learning that you kind of went through, or what did that look like?
Well, nothing really from a certification point of view. Although I will tell you, I did go for my my master's in finance, and I think I was telling John David this recently. I ended up 2 courses shy of getting it because I got involved in a startup that was just too time consuming for me to go back to finish my career. But no particular certifications. It was just always trying to stay on top of the latest technology, if you will. From an analysis point of view, you know, this is a long time ago, and many people on this call may have never even heard of this tool, but VisiCalc and Lotus 1-2-3 were probably the predecessors to Excel. And then, you know, Excel, Bill Gates just ate that market up, right? It's pretty much the dominant spreadsheet now. But we just always moved along with whatever the latest tool was. I'm trying to think of maybe some things outside the financial area that I got.
Because I think you've been a CFO since '87, right?
Sounds about right.
Which I was born in '89.
Oh, thanks.
So
yeah, I think that's 2 digs on so far. You're on a roll.
All right, but I did want to circle back before we move on to the next question about what's your take on grad school? Because it sounds like not getting the master's degree did not really hinder your career too much.
I don't think it did. I think grad school is really important, probably for certain disciplines and certain fields, you know, medicine or research and things like that. We're in the the waste management business, not exactly high science for the most part. And I'll give you a quick example of our president, who we're now a combined company. I just got to know him about 6 years ago, and I only found out recently that he doesn't have an advanced degree. He
really?
went into the Army out of high school, and then went into this particular industry, and he went to college at night. I mean, one of the sharpest business people I've ever worked with. I never would have guessed that, he didn't have a graduate degree. So I think that proves that, the further you get away from school, if you will, I think it's more relationships and experience than necessarily what degrees you've got or what school you went to. That's just my take on things.
Yeah, and I think that education, they don't do a good job, and this is something I'm trying to proactively kind of distill into my apprentices, is that you need to figure out what are your big wins, and you need to be able to communicate and brand that and use that as branding for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it's there's multiple things to unpack there. So number one, you need to think strategically, like what are the things that I can do and proactively solve problems. And then it's almost like you start problem solving your way to success, but only if you can actually talk about those wins. I think that's something that's missing from, well, I guess it's fairly common in the career service space, but not so much in school. They don't talk about, all right, well, what are your accomplishments? It's like listing responsibilities versus accomplishments, let's say on your resume or on LinkedIn.
Right.
And some of the interviews that I've went on, it's been kind of that same thing, just as far as, especially when you're looking to negotiate for like a higher salary, and things like that. Charlie, as far as when you have new accountants and new analysts kind of coming in, like people that you're kind of grooming and mentoring as they're coming up through the ranks, like what are some of the like qualities and some of the things that they do that you see that help them succeed on like a day-to-day?
So you mean looking back when they're interviewing?
Yes.
Yeah. I tell you, one thing that always impressed me was somebody that worked while I were in college. Maybe that's because I had to, but the fact that you just were always doing something, if you will. What that says to me is you've got that work ethic. The questions that people ask, of course, doing some research on the company that you're applying for shows that you've got an interest. We don't give exams, but I've heard exams that, like the technical companies give to see how do people think, how do they apply themselves and so forth. I think that's important. But it's really hard in just an interview to really understand how somebody's going to perform until, they're kind of on the playing field or at the job.
What are some of the negative qualities that you've seen that people who, I'm not going to say have been fired, but you've seen that kind of left the industry or left the company fairly quickly? What are some of the things that just didn't happen?
So you don't show up at work that's probably an obvious, but it is amazing to me how often that happens now. So somewhat related to that, once you get into a company, I think one thing that is important when you have a meeting, come prepared. And one thing I always try to do is, if somebody sets a meeting and it's about a particular subject, is jot down some thoughts ahead of time and send it to the person that organized the meeting and say, hey, if you get a chance, take a look at this. I just want to make sure, I'm understanding what the need is or what the objective is. If you show interest and you show educated interest in something, that's going to go a long way towards in an interview or with the people that you work with. To me, it's basic blocking and tackling often that distinguishes one person from another. It's not just, how you did on your SATs. You've got to be able to show that you can apply yourself and take the interest.
Very good. I think Lauren had a question.
Oh.
I think she said, what advice do you have for an analyst that has imposter syndrome?
Well, yeah, I'll just bring you in.
That's a good question. I never heard of the term imposter syndrome until my daughter brought that up. And my daughter is fairly successful in what she does, but she's always got this concern about, am I really that capable and so forth? And to me, she really is. Who may have the imposter syndrome. Are you referring to just having doubts about your capabilities or being able to demonstrate that you're capable?
Yeah, I guess coming from a different profession, it's a little bit intimidating entering a new field after I feel like I'm on the same playing field as my other coworkers.
Mm-hmm.
So wait, Lauren's got some news. Can I share it?
Okay, not yet. We can share it later.
Not yet. But okay. So she's applying for a brand new industry, and then also, and Lauren, correct me if I'm wrong on this, I think maybe some of the imposter syndrome comes in from a higher salary, because you're looking at what $20,000 to $30,000 pay increase. So like that, I think that kind of gives a lot of people the heebie-jeebies of like, am I worth this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean.
Okay. I think some of it goes back to what I mentioned before about, how do I value an employee? Showing the interest. If this is a new industry to you, do the research. If it's a new company, which it sounds like it obviously is, do the research on the company. If they're public, you can get a lot of information on them. If they're private, it's a little more difficult. I probably suffer from the imposter syndrome after all these years, and especially if it's something new. And what I find is just kind of dive in, right? And then all of a sudden you get caught up in it, and you find yourself moving forward, right? You're starting to discover things you didn't even think you could do, or questions you didn't think you could ask. So I would say just do the background, get up to speed on the industry and the company, and then just dive in. Make sure you understand what they want out of you, but just dive in. You'll probably do great.
Thank you for that advice. I will definitely take that.
Yeah. So another way of phrasing that, it's the way to build true confidence is through demonstrated performance. Mm-hmm. So put yourself in situations where you feel kind of pushed out of your comfort zone, and then you have to rack up some wins, and you can just kind of step that up to where you're all of a sudden in a completely new place. All right. It looks like, do we have another question in the chat? Oh, there's just Joanne. All right, Lauren, thank you so much for that question. Later on, we're going to jump into a Power BI review. We're going to pull Pete's project up. So I'll pull all the apprentices back on. But thank you.
Thank you. Good luck.
All right, so Gavin, what's the next question?
A lot of the questions were answered kind of as we first kind of went through there, but I guess my last question is, or what are some of the things that you naturally read, like just to kind of stay up with within your industry, or as you said, you're with accounting, or whether it's like Power BI, Tableau, what are some of the things that you're reading? What are some of the day-to-day things you're doing just to continue to learn?
I'm actually rereading a book that I read about 2 or 3 years ago, I should say, called Deep Work by Cal Newport. I think it might be really good for folks in this field. And, the premise is that we're just so distracted now by social media, by meetings, by having our cell phone in the meeting, which drives me crazy, by the way. It's really hard for people to concentrate for long periods of time and make progress on something. The reason I'm rereading that is actually because I want to get back and learn more about Power BI. And I think and I'm probably going to make a job change soon. And I'm trying to figure out, well, what's the best way to do that? And this book, goes through the premise as to why that's important and why it's kind of a lost art now. And also why it's even more valuable to companies, because not a lot of people are doing it anymore. So I would recommend you take a look at, consider that book.
If only there were a program where you could learn Power BI. No, Charlie, I feel like you're probably up to, because you've been working with Tableau for what? I think when I gave that talk, that was well before the lockdown. So that was like what, 4 years ago?
Yeah, it was 2019.
So yeah, I mean, you're probably up to snuff with Power, at least for the simple stuff, and then just go hire, like a super technical person to come do the coding and stuff.
Right. What else do I read? Personally, I just always try to have some kind of light reading going on, just to try and get away from all the busy workday. I read the Wall Street Journal, which probably has a reputation of being a conservative paper, but I just enjoy it because it's more than just business news. There's things on sports and music and books and things like that. And it's just a very comprehensive publication. Get information. I try and read Rolling Stone sometimes. I really love. I'm still stuck in the the late '60s and the early '80s and early '70s as far as music, and I love the blues. So I spent a lot of time just reading about that and collaborating with some people who are also into it.
Very cool. I appreciate it. I think that's my last question. As I said, most of the questions got answered in the beginning, so I appreciate it. That was a lot of good information.
Gotcha. So essentially, kind of to recap, so Gavin, you're applying for consulting jobs, right?
Kind of here or there. So some of the ones that I've been applying to at this point have been kind of consulting and project management, but I've also gotten interviews with actual specific analyst roles that will do some base level coding in SQL, which I have one tomorrow. So it's a little all over the place, but it just really, I'm just kind of paying attention to the company benefits and kind of that jazz.
Oh, I need to connect you with Lauren, because she's actually got a SQL portfolio on GitHub. So okay. I mean, I guess tomorrow's probably too short notice for you to like spin up a whole portfolio, but
well, I mean, it was pretty cool. I think one of the things that I talked about in the interview, I try to make it apparent that although I've used kind of Power BI, some of the advanced Excel and Tableau, I'm not an expert in it. So when I kind of started talking about that in the initial interview, he was like, hey, look, you don't need to know SQL, you just need to have an interest in it, and then kind of start some of the learning and stuff. So I think I'll be all right, but I mean, it's still beneficial for sure.
Yeah, but what's interesting is that it sounds like getting a consulting job is really nice early on in your career, because then you get to it's like a buffet of different projects that you might work on. Mm-hmm. So then you get a really wide breadth of experience and figure out, all right, this is the direction I want to go deep in.
For sure. I mean, as I said, the fact that our analytics project was in manufacturing, I currently work in manufacturing, kind of different roles, obviously, with the analytics, and I do something within more sales and kind of project management based now in my day-to-day. But a blend between the two was great in my interview. And as I said, for those jobs that are paying significantly more, they do like, combining the two. It seems to be working out pretty well for me so far.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like you're pretty much ready to go for an entry-level job. Yeah. And how many interviews have you landed so far?
Quite a few.
Because you've been all right. So Charlie, he applied to like what was it over 100 in 2 weeks?
It's been over 100, yeah. I mean, recently I've probably went on 2 or 3 interviews a week for the past couple weeks. Some have been phone conversations. A lot have been a mix between Teams, phone. Some have been first, seconds. A lot of all over the place, but lucky enough to have the interviews. As I said, got the 2 offers. Got another second tomorrow for an analyst specific role. And then a project management role as well tomorrow afternoon. So we'll see.
Gotcha. All right. So we got a question from somebody. So Justice asks, what's the best platform to create a portfolio as a data analyst? So Gavin, where are you building your portfolio right now?
Tableau. Tableau is it's the most visually appealing for most people that I've spoken to. As I'm going through the interviews, quite honestly, just like Charlie said, Power BI is something that they're more familiar with because of the Microsoft integration. So that for me is something that speaks to. So even if you're doing your Tableau visualizations on whatever the data is, try to do that same thing in Power BI. So for whatever reason, you can bring that up. I'm not really familiar how to build a Power BI portfolio, but if you can figure that out, that'll probably help a lot with some of these bigger companies.
Microsoft needs to figure that out. I don't know why, like Tableau's eating their lunch in terms of people building out Tableau public portfolios is such a good marketing engine for Tableau. I mean, I don't quite understand it. So Charlie, I'm curious, have you gotten much exposure to actually building out in Power BI, or did that consulting firm, did they do all of it themselves?
They did most of it. And that's why I'm reading this book and want to get a little deeper into Power BI. I think it's going to be a better fit for some of the work I'm going to do going forward. So my experience with Power BI is much more limited than with Tableau at this point.
All right, I got some courses I can send your way to give you some step-by-step instructions. Actually, this is a perfect time to review and do a knowledge check. So Gavin, what are the what? All right. So Gavin, what are the core components of Power BI? Inform our friend here, Charlie.
The core components of Power BI?
Yeah. What are the 3 main functions of it?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, I'll be honest. We'll go ahead and bow out.
Well, I guess another way of framing out is what are the 3 tabs on that left pane of Power BI?
Man,
No.
I'd have to look at
it. I guess we're failing as an apprenticeship program.
Look, I haven't touched it because, as I said, once we started Tableau, man, I let Power BI go.
Yeah,
completely.
Well, okay. Why? What did I use Power BI to teach you about?
On the spot. I'm trying to pull my stuff up now.
Oh no, are you panicking right now?
Yeah, I am panicking heavy right now.
All right. So the way that Charlie, I very intentionally structured the apprenticeship program to start with Excel, then go to Power BI, and then Tableau. Because Excel, it's like you start to get into some, like, for example, pivot charts, like you said, or pivot tables. So you can start seeing like how do measures and dimensions interact with each other. But then that's only if you just stick to Excel, you're pretty much, unless you do a whole series of VLOOKUPs, you're siloed to one data source at a time.
Right. So
then we jumped to Power BI so we could figure out how to build a data model to kind of meld data sources together, create that blueprint so that you could pull, this data point from over here and this data point from over here and figure out kind of those trends that span multiple data sets, which, to bring that full circle, that's exactly what we did with Tableau back 3-4 years ago. I think we were looking at accounting data with sales data and maybe some ERP data, and there were 3 different data sets, and we had to figure out, all right, how can we tie all this data together, which is it's pretty complex once to get started with, but once you kind of have everything mapped out, then it's so easy to start expanding your analysis out. And then also data visualization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the visualization, and again, this is probably obvious, that was really the home run for us, because we were able to put all this in front of the users and the team in what looked like a pretty simple presentation. And instead of rows and columns of numbers and data is, here's a pie chart with 4 data points on it. Look at the biggest one. Look at the smallest one. Figure out and you'll know immediately what the issue is or what the opportunity is. So.
All right. So Ellie, congratulations. You got it. Data, modeling, and visualization. So yeah. So that's essentially the 3 tabs. So you start with your visualization tabs at the top, and then there's your data. So you can manipulate that. And then the model is how to map them all together. Also, I feel like so Hunter, Charlie, I think we talked about this over lunch the other day about how I had a 21-year-old build out the infrastructure for $1 billion company in Tableau. Like
yes.
Because I mean, it was kind of like the perfect project in that they outsourced like a whole database manager and SQL developer and then put it all within that server. And then we just built out on top of that. But I mean, he was in my class starting in January the year before that. And I think around October, November, sometime around there, that's when we signed that client. So the benefit of these data visualization tools is that you can pick them up really quickly. Like, for example, doing that in an advanced coding language, it would probably take you quite a bit longer to get really proficient at that. All right, let's see. Got some more questions from the audience here. Hello, I had an interview today for remote data analysts. Well, I got to find out the only tools they're using are Excel and Python, but I started learning SQL and Power BI. So do I stop those for Python? I think so, although it's almost too late at this point because Python is a coding language, so that takes a little bit more time. It's almost like learning, like if I only speak English, so me learning Spanish is going to take quite a bit more to kind of cultivate that skill set. So that's a tough call. I would look into the basics of Python and just know kind of what all it can do, and then maybe some very basic coding. All right, so let's jump into the next segment, which I should have had like a card that said, all right, here's segment 1, segment 2, segment 3. So Pete, you've got a Power BI visual that you wanted to present. And I can go ahead and pull in the other apprentices as well. So I can pull Lauren back in. Do you see how to share? It's that kind of button down in that little bar.
Yeah. Let's see.
And I can pull in.
Just gonna make sure I share the right screen because I've got a few here. Here we go.
Oh, actually, Charlie, while he's working on that, this is one of my former students. Christina's asking, do you have any tips on creating and presenting reports in Excel? The job she's starting will require her to use a lot of it.
Reports as in what type of information are they looking for?
Hopefully she's listening in real time and can respond back to that.
Okay.
But I'm going to give kind of a fictional scenario just so we have something to move the conversation forward. So let's say that she's got to connect multiple data sources together using a VLOOKUP and then put together pivot charts.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, do you have any? Actually, let's kind of reframe that. How did you communicate your insights as a CFO in Excel? Was it mostly just charts or just tables?
It was mostly tables with some charts. Everything out of Excel, of course. So I guess it depends on, to some degree, who your audience is. So if this is going to be the management team or the board of directors, I think you want it to be relatively high level and charts and graphs. They probably don't want to see all the data behind it. But if you're doing something maybe with a working team, where you're trying to solve a problem, if you could bring the data to the meeting and on the fly build pivot tables and charts, that would really be useful. So and this probably goes back to the whole, in my mind, as an analyst, what's one of the things you need to be successful? And that's to understand the need, obviously. So, and the audience. So, sorry to answer your question like this, but it probably does depend on the need in the audience.
Okay, let's root down on a specific audience. So let's say she's presenting to a manager, like an analytics manager. Do you have any tips on? Actually, okay, is there a difference between presenting to middle management to the C-suite?
The C-suite, I think, wants to see it really summarized because they're generally, their time is even more limited than the management team. And you know, this, I'm not sure if this would be for your role, but in my role, you know, I always like to have a story to tell. So if I'm going into the monthly management meeting, we had a really good month, I want to make sure that I present the data so that that jumps out at people. You know, so you can see the trend line going up. If we had a really lousy month or we got some issues, I want that to really jump out at people. But that again is more for the board and for the management team. If it's for your cohorts or, you know, just a working group, hopefully they'll allow you to just go in there and bring the data in and just start working with it. What if analysis, for example. That's why, you know, who's your audience, and then kind of tailor the reporting around that need, around that particular paradigm.
Gotcha. So in summation, the dashboards you build depend on your audience, and what differentiates between the different levels of management is how granular you might want to get.
Yes, I would say that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, I absolutely agree to that. All right. So let's drop that. And then Pete, I see you got this shared. So what are we looking at here?
Yeah, so you gave us some great data with some Udemy courses, and you had real data there, and then you did some magic data in the background that you added with some demographics, so we could kind of play it out a little bit deep. And so, so from the class, I learned this little hack, which is up in this top edge in this kind of light aqua, whatever. Just a really nice way to be able to get to everything by year.
Oh, that's cool.
Starting that first. And then within that, you can go to any given quarter and do a deeper dive there. And then we can even do it month by month. So, and so there you go. And then one of the goofy things that I figured out is, so I thought I'd do the color coding with the gender piece, but I realized one of the drawbacks of Power BI is if I resort the gender, all of a sudden I've got it backwards, and so it's incongruent with the color coding with the labeling. So just something to be aware of there.
Interesting.
If you do special color coding. But what I really wanted to get at is what was driving more of the interest, especially across these different age groups. So we've got 4, the way you set up the data set, 4 is the most senior, and 1 is the
youngest.
Youngest, okay. And so you can really dig into this whole piece of it, of by name of what's being driven where. So it's and a lot of males taking this course. So
yeah, I think in this space it's typically much more males than females, at least in the on Udemy and YouTube as well.
Yeah, at least in that that age 4 cohort. So there might be some a lot more younger women would be one of my hypotheses, but I haven't done that in the Power BI yet. So
Charlie, you got any feedback?
I was going to say, as an end user, this is fabulous, especially the first thing that you demonstrated where you could change the variables, if you will, or the parameters up at the top. That is, you know, exactly what I was referring to when I said that, you know, as an Excel user, I can create something one time, but it's really hard for me to create it so I can refresh it automatically and present it to a non-technical people. And this is really cool.
Well, thanks.
Awesome. So I got some feedback.
Sure.
We have a date dimension, right?
Yeah.
So why is there no time series analysis?
Oh, now that's a very good question.
And follow-up question, can we do some time series analysis? I'm putting you on the fly just like I put Gavin, but I think it's important.
No, I may turn the same color as some of these, but that's all right.
All right. So open up
fearless pioneer.
Open up a new tab, a new page. Because I mean, we could. I think that first dashboard is pretty good as is. Let's just start from scratch. So I'm also kind of giving Charlie a lesson here too. So Charlie, you have actually like gone in here and started doing all this stuff, right?
In Power BI, I have, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess let's back. So do you understand the transform data button and how all that works?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Gotcha. So so that's where you can start to just create so many awesome. We just got a request. Can we zoom in a little bit, Pete?
Yeah.
This is such an interesting role. I'm like playing the host, and I've got like all the stuff flashing all around me.
That's about.
I'm just trying to moderate here. But all right.
I think it'll get without clipping off, and if we need to shuffle things around, we will.
All right. So, Pete, here's a challenge. Create me a time series. Show me rating over time.
Rating over time. Okay.
And let's say I think it's aggregated by day. So let's see if there's been a weekly change in the rating.
So let's see here. All right. So let's pull up rating, and we want to get our timestamp data. And so let's get. What do you think? Line chart, or?
That's a good question. What do you get? I'm throwing that to the group. What do you guys think? What's the best visualization to show time series data?
Line chart.
I would say a line chart.
Line chart.
Yeah, because it can show you kind of. And it's Charlie, like you were saying, the people in your organization, your colleagues, our eyes immediately understand that we read the page left to right, so they can kind of naturally intuit what's going on.
Right.
Okay, so one of the things I switched up was to the average of rating instead of the sum of the rating.
Perfect. Yeah.
And
so you can't add 5 plus 5 to get a 10-star rating. It doesn't make sense.
So
all right. So you guys are doing some learning.
And I want to change the Y dimension in terms of starting not just at 4.3, but starting earlier than that, but maybe not too much earlier than that.
Oh yeah, so it's hard for me to see, and I too have a Power BI preference. I mean, a Tableau preference over Power BI. So I think you can just right click on the axis. At least you can do that in Tableau and just change it. Let's see if the chat can bail us out here.
Let's see.
So average rating.
I just did it not few days ago, but
see, because and you know what I realized, Gavin, that was not fair to you to put you on the spot with Power BI. It's been 2 months since you've touched Power BI, and you've been working in Excel for 2 months.
For sure.
Let's see if chat's got any answers for us. Pete, we can just skip that for right now.
Okay.
Oh wait, Lauren, do you have the answer? You know how to do it? Yeah,
I do not know how to do it.
Us Googling how to change the axis. And actually this kind of brings me to the point of why I think Tableau is better for deep dives than it is than Power BI is. It's because it's so much more customizable to where this is like you kind of have to like click around and figure out how to change things to where within Tableau you can just right click on that axis and then change it. So it's kind of proving that point of I think Tableau is a little bit better for data visualization. Although the nature of everything being so organized and you kind of have to go through it, makes Power BI a little bit better for the ETL side of things. But let's focus on the actual, let's get it aggregated to week and year.
Okay.
You remember how to do that?
Let's see. So that's the year.
So you got to go back out, and it's hard for me to see this right now. Okay, so do you see where it says x-axis?
Yeah.
So one thing you could do is just X out year.
Okay.
And now that brings that down to the quarter. And then you can X that out.
Oh, sure.
So do you guys remember what this is looking at it as? As is? Charlie, this might be a question for you. So are you familiar with the concepts of discrete versus continuous values?
Oh,
Yeah.
sure.
So is this a discrete or continuous analysis?
Like discrete.
Yeah. Because we've essentially got 4 buckets right here.
Right.
So quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3. Pete, if you hit that drop down menu next to timestamp,
Yeah.
I believe you can change that to try timestamp. Let's see what happens when you do that. There you go.
Whoa.
So Charlie, what is it now?
Continuous.
Yeah. So now we're looking at a continuous line there.
Whoa.
So that is the rating of the day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The average rating of the day. So that's interesting that I guess there's some days where we just had no rating, so it dropped all the way down.
Wait,
Pete, do you understand?
John David, could you explain a little bit more in detail the difference between continuous and discrete? Because that's something I'm having difficulty wrapping my head around.
Okay. So you see this line chart right now? That is actually, here's a better way of looking at it. So we're looking at Udemy data. So if that is a discrete value, we could have a 1-star, we could have a 2-star, we could have a 3-star, 4-star, or 5-star. If it was a continuous value, we could have a 2.1 star. Does that make sense? So there's any value exists within. So there's 5 buckets within that value scale. And if it's a discrete value, it has to fall squarely within one of those, to where if it's a continuous value, it can be anywhere on that spectrum.
Okay, that makes so much sense. Thank you for that.
All right, cool. Yeah, I mean, some of these are a little bit hard to explain. But all right, so now we're kind of working through. Man, you know what I'm realizing is that it's so I'm not sure if I can even remember how to do. We could do this in Tableau very quickly, just changing it to the right aggregation. But I'm not sure if I can remember how to change the date aggregation. But essentially, Pete, what you could do is just incorporate that into the dashboard. So there's just the rating by month. So maybe there's some seasonality within the ratings. So people taking the course in the summertime, then maybe they're a little bit more, forgiving and optimistic. So Charlie, do you have any questions about Power BI in general?
I don't think I've got questions. A lot of curiosity. I do want to get into it and try and do something that along the lines of what Pete's doing here. And I really like the concept of having, I'm not sure what they're called, but the multiple visualizations or widgets, if you will, inside just like that, where you've got a number of different charts and visualizations on one screen or one canvas.
Yeah, so we just call that a dashboard.
Dashboard, okay.
Yeah. So and then it's all interactive, and you can start playing with how the different filters interact with each other. You could even use certain visualizations as filters too. You just toggle on the filter icon.
Okay.
I'm curious though. So you're more attracted to Power BI than Tableau?
Simply because I don't really know much about it. Not that I'm an expert in Tableau, but I think I know my way around that fairly well. Tableau, I'm really very much at the beginning. So.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you learn one, the other one's relatively easy to pick up. It's just a question of like we were looking at the axis. It's like, well, you can do it this very simple way in Tableau. It might be a little bit different. And I don't think it's necessarily riveting live stream content for us to Google how to do a very specific, simple task. But I don't know. I mean, if people want to see that, leave a comment. But cool. So Pete, good job on that. I mean, it's really cool that you're taking that one was actually the Excel data source though, wasn't it?
It was.
So you've also got the modules with, I think we're looking at, was it ERP data in Power BI?
Yep.
So that one had multiple data sources that you had to figure out how to combine them together. Cool. So does anybody got any more questions? Because I think it's been just about an hour. So I feel like this has been a pretty good lecture. Charlie, I really appreciate you coming on.
Well, thanks for inviting me. And I love the questions and the interest. So good luck to everybody.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Thank you, Charlie. Nice meeting you.
Thanks, everybody.
Likewise.
All right. Talk to you later.